In the journal, there is a place for an illustration at the top and then lines for writing underneath. So have them finish their written portion of the journal before they do the accompanying illustration, which they always enjoy doing. So now I'm going to answer a few million-dollar questions for you. How much should my child write in the journal? Well, that depends on their experience and ability level. So novices would probably write 2 sentences. An intermediate journal writer would write 3 or 4 sentences, and an experienced journal writer could fill the whole lined section of the page. That being said, also pay attention to their level of engagement and attention and enthusiasm on that day, because if a child is just not into it, then it's going to be very tedious and not an enjoyable experience for all involved. So follow the child, in the famous words of Maria Montessori. Go with the flow. Next question, which mistakes should I correct and when? When should I intervene to correct mistakes or give guidance? Well, the simple answer to this question, the basic rule is don't interrupt or intervene to correct unless the child asks for help. Wait to make the appropriate corrections with them until after. And the reason for this is that when you interrupt a child when they're writing, you are disrupting their flow, you're breaking their concentration, and you're also adversely affecting their confidence. We want to let them enjoy the writing experience and get comfortable with this new medium without being inundated with things that they are doing wrong. So in general, wait. But a few exceptions to that rule would be with beginning journal writers, they obviously require and want more help and support, so be present to do so. Also assist your child when they ask for help. So of course, if they ask for help, then give it to them. And then a few corrections I would intervene for immediately would be word spacing. If they're not spacing words, I would tell them to stop and remember to put their finger between words. I would remind them to reference their numbers and letters writing chart if I notice that their general for letter formation and placement is off, if they're having issues with that. But generally, with more experienced children, I would wait until they are finished writing their entire journal entry and then go back and go over their work with them to make the appropriate corrections. So what is an appropriate correction? Well, in the spelling department, it's best to hold children accountable for the spelling rules to which they've been introduced. So, for example, I know that Rowan has been introduced to the Magic E because she's completed this workbook. And also, here's a tip and a trick. As a quick reference to find out which spelling conventions and rules your children have been introduced to, look at the back of their reader. And here you can see, different phonograms that they've been introduced to and spelling rules. So there is a quick reference for you. So I know Rowan's been introduced to the Magic E. And you probably wondered why Miss Mia wrote BIC, and you were maybe about to withdraw your children from my classroom. But I wrote it on purpose to make an example and illustrate a point. So at this point, I would go back and say to Rowan, read this word for me. And she might say bike, and I'd say, I see BIC. What do I need to add to the end of this word to make this vowel say its alphabet name? And a Magic E. So we would make that correction because I know that she knows about the Magic E. There you have that. For other words, for example, Rowan wrote this word in her journal the other day. And, well, let's go over how this word came to fruition. First, she asked me for help because she said caterpillars was too long of a word, then she couldn't write it on her own. So what we did was we broke it up into syllables. Your children have all had lessons on how to break words up into syllables by clapping. So I'd say, well, how many syllables are there in the word caterpillars? Let's count my claps. Caterpillars. And she would say 4. Okay, what's the first syllable in caterpillars? Placing an emphasis on the syllable I'm trying to isolate. And she would say ca. So I'd say, all right, write the sounds that make the first syllable ca. So she wrote a k and an a. And then moving on, what's the next syllable? The second syllable, caterpillars. She'd say tur. Write the sounds that make tur. She'd write it. So at the end, we ended up with this word. I wouldn't offer many corrections on this word at all. It's a reasonable phonetic attempt at spelling a long word. She hasn't been introduced to the rule where ER makes the sound, so there would be no need for me to ask her to make corrections there. I might ask her to correct the K and turn it into a C and say, you know that K and C can, or K, kicking K and curly K both make the sound K. Well, in this case, in the word caterpillars, it's actually a curly K. So I hope that gives you some idea of how I would go about choosing what to correct in a word and what not to correct in a word as far as spelling goes. If a child is forming letters incorrectly, so I might walk by and see her doing her journal entry, have a peek, and note that she's making her N's like this. You see that? So I wouldn't intervene then. What I would do is make a mental note of that, or even a note on a paper to myself. And then I would go back and have her practice the proper formation of the letter N in her penmanship book. So I would have her do a whole page of N's. I would start by making light colored ones that she could trace, and then have her doing them herself in her penmanship book. So again, I'd make a note of it and then address the correction later. We'd go back through the journal entry. I would definitely have her accountable for, as I mentioned before, uppercase letters, capitalization at the beginning of a sentence, and punctuation at the end of a sentence. And we would also make sure that sentences are complete and not fragments. So these would all be corrections that I would definitely focus on making when a journal entry is complete. So I think that's a lot of information I've just given you. I hope that it helps, and we would love to see photographs of your children's journal entries. Send them to us via email, WhatsApp, Teams, so we can see the wonderful work they've been producing and also have the opportunity to provide them with some feedback on their journal entries. Don't be shy to reach out with questions, comments, concerns. We're always here. Thank you for your time. I know that was a lot of time on this video, but it's a very important piece of work, and we encourage you to do it with your kiddos. Happy journal writing! And P.S. if your child has, for example, written all of their G's backwards in their journal entry, once they finish their journal entry, I would have them go back and erase all of the G's, reference the numbers and letters writing chart, and rewrite their G's in the correct direction. Okay, bye-bye.